Do you remember last time?
We read everywhere, essentially, down by 45%. We're down 16%. Dow at the same time has fallen about 18%. The stock market is now down 21%.
We're now down 43%.
What in the world is happening on Wall Street?
Two-year no deals went from 190 to 166 in the blink of an eye. The NASDAQ, everything and more wiped out. It was the worst day on Wall Street since the crash of 1987.
From the financial capital of the world.
Crashes.
The opening bell is going to ring
You've been warned.
in 5 seconds, and to be honest with you, we wish it wouldn't.
Traders here working the phone say a lot of their customers are freaked out, waiting to see how low the Dow will go. They're focused on the Dow, not so focused on OPEC. Yes, OPEC did cut production by 1.5 million barrels per day.
Really, you're seeing just broad-based declines across all of the major technology sectors. Apple's under pressure. Yahoo down 8.5%, Cisco 6.5%, Research in Motion 10%.
And we're not getting the bid one, and we're not getting the stock trading, and we see where the buyers are. We're just every day they're pounding it.
The heightened financial turmoil that we have experienced of late may well lengthen the period of weak economic performance and further increase the risk to growth.
You can't look at it after you buy it. It's so horrible.
We've had an 8-day losing streak in the Dow that in percentage terms puts it on
You've
par,
been warned.
close to the loss
Black
suffered in
Monday.
that crash in 1987.
Countdown
Close to
is
that.
on.
This market is as volatile as you'll ever see.
Traders say this is the craziest day they have ever seen in these markets. Veteran traders say they've never seen anything like it.
Okay, they call it a formula. Legalized comedy. All right, so that
we did hit that, not in 4 years, but in less than 2 years. And what I'm seeing, Joe, is a beautiful situation where we will hit 50,000 on the Dow, and we're going to have a broad-based recovery in the S&P 500. The market's trying to find its bottom now. The thing I would say to retail investors is don't get panicked out by all of this.
And I think from policy institutes on both sides of the aisle, the methodology that was used has been universally derided as being non-serious. I don't know whether you know exactly who came up with the formula, but it allowed you to at least characterize most of these countries as being their tariffs well above the reality of the situation, so that when you say that we're going to do half on them, it was much higher than anyone anticipated. And I think you'd have to concede that this was not the market reaction you were looking for. There's a way of maybe incrementally trying to accomplish some of the things that the president wants to do in a reasonable, serious way. And this just almost across the board has caused what you're seeing in the stock market, and a lot of head scratching and head shaking on whether anyone really knows what they're doing in this case, Peter.
All right, well,
Can you at least acknowledge that?
Sure. No, I can't, because here's what I'm seeing. You're throwing a lot of stuff at me. First of all, the methodology was perfectly sound. It was done by the Council of Economic Advisors based on long-term studies that are in the academic literature, and the people taking pot shots at us are the same people that always take pot shots at us.
The American Enterprise Institute, Peter.
Of course. Joe, come on. The American Enterprise Institute.
You have talked a lot about how tariffs, and the president's talked a lot about how tariffs can be helpful as a tax, effectively, as a way to raise revenue here in the United States.
Tariffs are tariffs, and they do raise revenues. They will. I see them as a tax cut, Andrew, because they're going to help pay for the biggest tax cut in American history. Every dollar that we extract from foreigners who are cheating us is going to go to the American public in the form of debt reduction and tax cuts, including, for example, in our auto industry. Anybody who buys an American-made car is going to get a healthy tax cut. We were given $7,500 away for EVs made partly in China. That's crazy. If
tax cuts, do you know anything about letting the top marginal rate go? Are you a proponent of letting that go from 37 back above 39.6 to try to pay for some of this other stuff? Because you know how many small to medium-sized corporations pay taxes at those rates if they're
Joe, that one's not my lane. I let Scotty
you just said we're going to cut taxes. That's not. You add all this together.
No tax on tips.
And it's not
no
looking.
tax on overtime. No tax on Social Security. Tax breaks for if you buy a domestic auto. But if you raise the top
rate, that's not a Republican or a conservative.
You're asking the wrong guy.
Whose idea was that? So the tariffs are all so you own the tariffs then?
Joe,
I don't know if I'd want to know that.
You're going after me
either.
for something that I'm not involved in. I can talk tariffs till the cows come home. Hey, Becky, how are you?
Let's talk a little more.
The easiest thing to do this Monday the 7th is to stand here and make a whole load of funny comments, jokes, and have a laugh. But this particular Monday, the way the markets are crashing, it's not the time for a laugh or a joke, because this is going to affect some people in a really serious way. I would ask if there is anybody who has any level of financial advice or expertise, please, in the comment section now, with regards of there are going to be people who are worried about their 401s, what they should do about that. Others are going to be, if they have investments, is now the time to get out? Is now the time in terms of the dip? These are all things, so please, if anybody has any financial advice at all, comment section. The other thing which I do not understand is, if you are President of the United States of America, surely you have access to call upon the biggest and best financial brains anywhere. So how does Trump end up with Lutnick and Navarro? And it's not because Navarro was locked up previously. He just seems clueless. Like, basics. I mean, it says something that Elon Musk is just calling out Navarro. Yet Navarro is the brain, supposedly, behind the trade war. World War Fee, as I dubbed it. But as I said, I don't want to make any jokes. And then this guy, Harold Lutnick, who, I don't know what his political background is, but is suddenly, what is he, finance secretary, something like that, just out of his depth, says one thing, he is the classic example. There's a book called The Endless Step, which is about the Russian planes. I'm not making this up. It's where the phrase, one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. That is Howard Lutnick. Now, if this was just him giving family financial advice, fair enough. But he's the person that's given the president this advice, I think, which has led the whole world economically to be in a fragile state. And if I see one more person, this is how the MAGAs are spinning it, saying, oh, well, it's just people who have stocks and shares, the average person it won't affect. Okay. I think the trickle down, or whatever word you say, will eventually affect stability. It definitely is going to affect prices. And it clearly will mean that jobs could potentially be lost. This is not a joke. I appreciate the individual at Fox will be spinning it. The craziest thing about all of this, if we go back to President Biden, I'm old enough to remember when Biden was in charge, inflation was a dirty, dirty word. Now it's like, oh, a little bit of inflation, a little bit of pain. And again, the thing that pisses me and a lot of people off is those that are giving out all of this chat. Do you think they're the ones that are really deep down suffering? Wondering about, say, insulin bills? Wondering about their 401s? Wondering about job security? I'll say one more time. If anybody has any level of financial know-how, please, just in the comment section below, 2 questions. Is it going to get any worse? And how do we get out of the mess we're in? Actually, a 3rd question. Who's to blame? Comment section is all yours. Thank you. And look after your money.
Mr. President, which is what it should be.
Is there a Trump put, though? Is there pain in the market at some point? You're unwilling to tolerate this idea of a Trump put? Is there a threshold?
I think your question is so stupid. I mean, I think it's I don't want anything to go down, but sometimes you have to take medicine to fix something. And we have such a horrible, we have been treated so badly by other countries because we had stupid leadership that allowed this to happen. They took our businesses, they took our money, they took our jobs, they moved it to Mexico, they moved it to Canada, they moved a lot of it to China, and it's not sustainable. We're not going to do it. Now we have hundreds of billions of dollars is pouring into our country on a monthly basis. It's pouring. It's already started because they put tariffs on, and eventually it's going to straighten out, and our country will be solid and strong again.
On the on tariffs. Is it a negotiation now? Bloomberg, sir. Is it a negotiation or rules of the road?
Go ahead. Another question, please.
Sir, about TikTok.
She asked too many questions.
Trump made a lot of promises on the campaign trail, but he didn't talk to voters or warn them that their 401ks would take a nosedive and that tariffs would make almost everything more expensive. CNN's chief data analyst Harry Enton is joining us now. Hello, Harry. You're going to run the numbers for us. I am very curious to see what you found out about all of this. So let's start first with how unique the drop in the market is under Trump, because I have heard from some Republicans that say this is pretty normal stuff.
Yeah, if this is pretty normal stuff, I'd like to know what not normal stuff is. If this is a boom, I'd like to know what a bust is. I mean, my goodness gracious, we'll talk about it. I mean, talk about the S&P 500. It's dropped 15% under Donald Trump's presidency. The S&P 500 has been collecting data essentially since 1957. It's been an index. I went back and I looked for drops of 15% with a president who was inheriting a bull market. There's only one dude on your screen. It's Donald John Trump. He is the only one to see a drop of 15% this soon into his presidency in the S&P 500 after inheriting a bull market. In fact, there's only one other president who has seen a drop of 15% this early on in his presidency, and that was George W. Bush back in 2001. But, of course, he was, in fact, inheriting the dot-com bubble bust. And so this is truly unique, where you come in with a bull market and then, boom, right through the floor, Donald Trump, the S&P 500 dropping already 15%, Jessica.
And so there's the market, but then there's the chance of broader economic problems. And that chance is right. That possibility is rising, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. A chance of a recession, something none of us want to see. And what's the chance of a recession? I mean, J.P. Morgan, look at this, now up to 60%. It was 40% in early March. How about Goldman Sachs? It was 20% in early March. We're now up to 35%. Basically, at this point, you average all these different companies together who put forecasts out on the chance of a recession. It's about 50-50, way up from where we were at the beginning of this year. Poly market, where you can trade, was, I think, a 30% chance at the beginning of the year. Now it's 60%. No bueno. What stays in the stock market, what happens in the stock market may not stay in the stock market, Jessica.
And Americans do seem to be having an issue with how Trump is handling the economy right now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at these numbers, you wouldn't be surprised to see Donald Trump's net approval rating. Compare it now to where it was at this point in the first term. In the first term, he was above water at plus 5 points. Where is he now? He's way underwater. He is swimming with the fishes. Look at this. He is the worst ever for a president at this point in a term, on record at minus 12 points. I just never thought I would see the day, because as we were hinting at the beginning, Trump promised an economic boom. Voters bought into it, but so far they ain't liking what they're seeing.
Jimmy Carter's probably the best example of a president getting taken down by the economy recently. How long did it take 39th president to go into negative territory on the economy?
Yeah, always when you think of economic bust, you think of Jimmy Carter, the recession that occurred under him, right? How long did it take him to get a negative net approval rating on the economy? It took him 11 months. It took him all the way until December 77, January of 78. Donald Trump already has a net negative approval rating only 2 months. 2 months into this term, he is the fastest on record to go negative. And comparing to Carter, I mean, you don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that 2 is a lower number than 11. Carter took a while. Trump, right on in. The voters have turned right against him.
I also want to talk about the protests that we saw across the country yesterday. Those protests were protesting the Trump administration. They generated a lot of interest online. What did you find?
Yeah, so, you know, when we entered the Trump presidency the second time around, there really wasn't that resistance, right? Not what we saw in January of 2017. Well, now we're starting to see what we saw in January of 2017. Look at this, Jessica. This is Google searches for protests. Get this, up 1,200% versus a year ago. It was the highest level on Saturday, and I went back into the record books. You know I like to do that, Jessica Dean. And what did we see? We see that the number of folks who are searching for protests, interested in going out in those protests, is finally matching what we saw in January of 2017, if not exceeding it. If the Democratic resistance seemed to be nowhere at the start of this Trump presidency, with approval ratings for Democrats down at their lowest level ever, all of a sudden Donald Trump has supercharged it, and the protests and the resistance is on.
All right. Harrington walking us through the numbers as he always does. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, still ahead. How
people that are being hurt, those trickle-down effects are going to be felt by working Americans who can afford it the least. And they're being told by billionaires that there's nothing to see here. They're being told by millionaire talking heads on other networks, there's nothing to see here. It's a war that we had to enter. No, let's be very clear here. Regardless of how you feel about tariffs, this is a self-induced war that we started. All right? All right. This is voluntary. I spent 3 months after the election warning Republicans they needed to be careful. 3 months. We've got about 10 minutes of clips we could play you. We've already done it before. I could play it again. 10 minutes of clips saying, be very careful. We have the strongest economy in the world, but we have bubbles in the market, stock market. We have bubbles in crypto. We have a fiscal bubble. Be very careful, manage it wisely, and we will continue to see working Americans taken care of. That's not happening right now. So it's going to be fascinating to see what happens this week. What's going to happen this week with Republicans? Are they really? Republicans, by the way, Republicans in Congress have the power. Have the power to not stop it, to moderate it, to pick certain countries that they think it's gone too far. There are some Republicans speaking out. Chuck Grassley has spoken out about it. Ben Shapiro says it's unconstitutional. Bill Ackman, he saw the light. How could Bill Ackman ever have seen this coming? How could? Oh, wait a second. This is exactly what Donald Trump promised for years. In fact, he's been talking about this since 1987, all right? So he believes in this. So people on Wall Street going, oh, my God, I'm so shocked. How could this ever happen? I supported him, but I really didn't think he was. What do you mean? He's been saying tariffs are beautiful, beautiful things, while the rest of the world has been saying, no, they're not. They're dangerous. Mm-hmm. This is what made the Great Depression extraordinarily bad and extended it. Right? So you knew. You knew, Bill Ackman. I'm sorry somebody at a college said something that offended you. I'm sorry, we've got to fight against the woke word. Well, I agree with that, too. But you don't have to do it by blowing up the world economy. So we'll see what happens. But here's the thing. Always remember, if you hear anybody today, tomorrow, next week say, oh, this had to be. No, that's not true. That's doublespeak. And if you hear Republicans saying we can't do anything about it, that's just a lie. That's just a lie. They have the constitutional power to decide, are 49% tariffs too much on Vietnam? Maybe it should be 20%. Let's round off the edges. Let's make it a little less tough on American businesses. EU, are those too tough? Let's negotiate. Let's talk to the president. Maybe we can come together and come up with something that's not quite as extreme. You're not going to see that this week. You may not even see it next week. I just want you to know, though, when they're telling you this has to be done, that's not true. And when they're telling you, these Republicans on the Hill, we can't do anything about it, well, that's just a lie. It's doublespeak.
With that in mind, President Trump's tariffs have stock futures plummeting again this morning. The Dow is down more than 1,100 points, while the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ have both dropped by 3%. This follows a market freefall to end the trading week, capped off by the Dow losing 2,200 points on Friday. It was the first time that the index had ever lost more than 1,500 points in back-to-back days. The massive losses were also fueled by China, announcing on Friday it would impose a 34% tariff on all goods imported from the United States beginning this Thursday. Meanwhile, President Trump continues to downplay the tanking markets, writing on social media last night that his tariffs are a beautiful thing to behold. Minutes after that post, he spoke to reporters on Air Force One.
There's been some
speculation, partly because of the video that was posted on Truth Social, that there was some sort of deliberate effort on your part to have the market sell off. Can you talk about that?
No, that's not so. But I do want to solve the deficit problem that we have with China, with the European Union and other nations. And they're going to have to do that. And if they want to talk about that, I'm open to talking. But otherwise, why would I want to talk?